Hey, how's it going? Welcome to Life and Comedy. I'm your host, Will Beckton. This is a podcast about comedy and the comedians that do it. First few episodes are kind of UCB-centric. I performed at the Upright Citizens Brigade in New York in the early 2000s and kind of figured this podcast would provide a good excuse to reconnect with some of the people I admire from that scene. My guest today is Seth Morris. Seth is an unbelievably talented improviser and has appeared on shows like Curb Your Enthusiasm, Veep, and Big Mouth. I always enjoy talking to Seth. He's a really funny and insightful guy. Here's that interview. Here with Seth Morris, writer, actor, really amazing improviser, old UCB friend. How's it going?
It's good, man. How are you? This is a beautiful studio you have.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate you coming here. I figured we'd start with UCB, because, you know, how we know each other.
Yeah.
So how did you find out about the theater initially?
So I was in New York taking short form improv classes at Chicago City Limits, just trying to figure out what to do in the city. And I would just go up to different improv jams and different little things. When I moved to New York, I knew I wanted to be an actor, but I didn't really have a plan. I just assumed that, okay, it's New York, you have to try out for Broadway, and I guess I'm just going to try to sing, or you just try to do it all, whatever. I took the first class at Chicago City Limits, and I said, hey, should I audition for this touring company for you guys? She said, you should just go to UCB. That's where you're going to end up.
Yeah.
And so I went and checked out an ASCAT. This is a story a million people have probably told, and I just was blown away. And
was that at 22nd Street already, or was that at the...
That's at Solo Arts.
At Solo Arts, yeah.
Yep. Completely blown away. Never seen anything like it, and was, oh, this is my thing.
Yeah.
This is what I've been doing, but I didn't know it, you know?
Yeah.
The way that I would joke with my friends, and obviously better and beyond, but they were just completing that first wave of classes when I saw that show. So like Paul Scheer and Rob Riggle and remember Aaron Bergeron?
Oh, yeah, totally.
He was in that sort of first wave, maybe Chad Carter, some people like that, Owen Burke. And then that second wave, I met Rob Corddry, and Brian Husky, Jamie Denbo. Then I soon met John Bowie, and, you know.
But those three were all in one class? Like that was one class?
Corddry and I were in the same class.
Nice.
I think actually, no. And then I met, because Corddry and Husky were roommates. So then
Yeah.
It's so funny how in the beginning you're kind of like, who's that? They're the first wave, and there's like, and now it's so immediately becomes we're all part of this thing, especially a theater like that has so many people coming through. You become the old guard after like 9 months.
I know. Was really, you know? Yeah, because I mean, I moved to New York at the end of like 99 and like 2000 started taking classes. Rob Lathan told me about it.
Oh, okay.
Because we went to high school together.
In Atlanta?
In Atlanta.
Yeah.
Which actually Ed Helms went to the same high school randomly. Or did UCB randomly, whichever one you want to apply randomly to. But yeah, it was the generations, like, because you guys felt like the old guard, like already, you know, like.
Right. It's so funny because that, and it was had only been maybe 2 years or something.
Yeah.
You know?
It was fun to look back at this stuff because, the two things that I think of immediately, like with you, are Naked Babies and Feature.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't realize that all of the Naked Babies were in Feature. Like,
Feature was this improvised movie form that Matt Besser taught us. Yeah, it was kind of a super group, quote unquote, that Besser put together. And it was great because it was also at a time when all of the early UCB really did feel... I think one of the things that was unique about it is we all kind of knew, oh, this is something special. Like this. I
was wondering about that. If you sensed that at that time, like, this was like lightning in a bottle kind of thing. I
did. Yeah, I did. Also, partly because just how funny everybody was. Yeah. You know, I remember seeing Rob Riggle. It's like, this guy's a fucking Marine, and he's so funny and so aware of how he's funny, and just all these different levels of people funny, and just thinking, of course they're going to be on TV.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. And not only that, but, you know, long form improv, it sounds a little dorky, but it was new. Nobody really knew what it was. So it felt like this really groundbreaking thing.
Yeah. Everybody just knew, like,
Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Yeah, whose line is it anyway? I would watch in college, and like my roommates and I would like try to play the same.
Rob Williams does improv, and
you
know, and this was just such a deeper cut of that genre.
Yeah.
So it definitely felt exciting. But I think all theater communities feel the way that they build those is we're all part of something here, you know, and people are volunteering and helping out, and there's value to all of it. But it's rare, I think, that you feel like this is a thing, and it really is a thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It was really interesting because I definitely knew, I was like, holy shit, I hit the jackpot here as far as like just a place to be, like both at the theater and also like at McManus and just kind of like, you know, basking in all that talent. And then I remember the one thing that really jumps out at me, and I can't remember what it was. It might have been a Pound show or something, but there was some show, or it might have been a jam or something. But it's somebody basically kind of pimped you out and said like, oh, Jim Carrey over there. And you had to be Jim Carrey for a scene. But you fucking like nailed it. Like, and I was just like, holy shit. And I was like, I don't see the difference.
Right.
Talent-wise.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Between this guy and Jim Carrey. But there was a lot of moments like that. Like I remember the first time I saw Pile Driver with Hubel and Michael Delaney. Yeah. Like those two energies playing off each other was just, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah. Well, I think you kind of tapped into a couple of things, which is interesting. One is I feel like people underestimate the hangout part of a creative community. You know, when people are trying to find spots for theaters, obviously you have to get it where you can because people don't have money. But going to McManus, the bar that was near the theater, was just an extension of class. And people not only practicing doing bits and applying what they had learned in class, but talking about different ideas or different influences and this and that. And this is all over the place. I was talking with, do you know Tim Baltz? He's on Righteous Gemstones and amazing. So funny. Really one of the best improvisers I've ever seen. But he's from Chicago. And he was just talking about the importance of those scenes where, you know, we influence each other. Michael Delaney and Dave, I don't remember his last name. He doesn't perform anymore. People putting on these shows that were just so incredible and so unique, things that I would never have thought of, and being inspired of, I want to do my version of that. Yeah. You know, and they might open you up to different comics that they were influenced by, and it really sort of feeds on each other. You know, I think it's easy to focus on the superstars that came out of a certain place, but everybody was being inspired by the people around them.
For me, Delaney was like, he would do a show with Secunda that was just...
Was that nailed down?
I don't know if it was nailed down. It might have been a marathon show. I think they just used their name. I think it was just like literally Delaney and Secunda maybe. Yeah. But nailed down is like they didn't move, right?
That's they would literally come out and nail their shoes into the stage, and they just stood there.
And not, I mean...
These beautiful, long dialogue scenes.
But the fact that they could, just the two of them, just those two brains, and obviously, I mean, Swarm is fucking insane good. Like, and then the two Andys with Andy Dalen and Andy Secunda, like, oh my God. Like, I cannot believe that they can keep the ball, not just like, meekly going over the net, but like keep building, you know?
It makes me think of, you know, in high school, you have friends that play in bands and you think, oh my God, they're good because they're kind of doing an imitation of the things. Like, it sounds just like Highway to Hell.
Yeah. That guy got an SG from his dad.
Yeah, and then you just realize that, oh, they just learned the chords or whatever. You know, these are just... And then you run into somebody who's actually talented and you, oh, this is the thing. You know what I mean? Because you're around funny people. The UCB was... Everybody was the funniest person from wherever they were from. Yeah. You know? And then I think we all got there and we're like, oh, shit. Yeah. Oh, these fucking people are really funny. Yeah. You know? It definitely felt special and unique. And I guess only time has proven that it was.
Yeah, totally. Well, as far as, I mean, Naked Babies, I'll just read the names because an insane foursome of people. John Ross Bowie, Rob Corddry, Brian Husky, Seth Morris. I mean, all of you, the energies you guys all brought were very unique, and you guys played off of each other incredibly well. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to remember if it was more sketch, more improv, or did you split the show? How would a Naked Baby show usually
It was
go?
mostly sketch. We ended up doing
I remember it, but then I saw it build as an improv group at Sketchfest.
Sketchfest, we do improv there.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Well, the four of us were always put on an improv Herald team together.
Mm-hmm.
And then we did probably like, I don't know, 4 or 5 written sketch shows. And then we had like a little residency at the Parkside Lounge.
Oh, nice.
It was like kind of a variety show, but we would, we didn't write a whole show, but we would say, oh, the theme is this show is set in the future, or this one is a telethon or whatever. I think we would finish maybe some sets with an improv show.
That rings a bell, yeah.
But if I'm remembering right, especially in those earlier days, each show you had about a half-hour slot.
Yeah.
So that's what the shows were.
Yeah. Then Blackballed, the Bobby Duke story, probably the closest thing. I mean, it wasn't a UCB movie. Like, it wasn't like directed by like Besser or anything like that, but it probably has the most like UCB people in it.
It was definitely one of those first,
of anything I can think of. I mean, you had like, obviously Cordry, but then like Ed Helms was in it, and like the Mr. Ass guys were all in it. I mean, it's pretty.
Curtis Gwynn,
Gemberling,
Jack McBrayer, Jamie Denbo.
Sheer was in it, right?
Sheer was in it. Owen's
brother was incredible in it. Like, I just watched the trailer when I knew I was going to talk to you. I watched the trailer and I was like, oh yeah, I forgot how good Owen's brother was in that.
He's great. He still acts.
He does. I was wondering about that.
He still acts a lot. Yeah,
because he still paint. He was a really good painter as well.
Yeah, he's an intense dude. He lives, I think, in the same warehouse somewhere in New York, and he does these amazing big paintings, and he's a musician, and his
presence is
he's great.
Is an intense on-screen presence. Yeah. And I was curious, Rob Serson was the director, like
Brent Serson.
Brent Serson, sorry.
Yeah.
Was he part of the UCB world, or how did he?
He was peripherally part, if I'm remembering right. So he was friends with Brian. He was a young guy. He was like our age, but he worked at Beverly Bear, and then he became a manager for Principato. I don't know if he was already a manager for Principato, but he was one of those guys who said, oh, okay, I see this scene. I'm not an actor. I want to be part of this world. I like comedy. He was sort of the conduit. It wouldn't have happened if Brian Steinberg.
Oh, okay, cool.
And, this was everybody's first job. So they're like, oh, a movie. This is great. And it's a great idea, but it was a very cool connection for a brand new director to make.
Oh man. Yeah. I kind of remember when that was going on.
Yeah.
Because like, I remember like Gemberling and Curtis are like, oh, we're doing this like paintball movie. It was great. Like even seeing like Sean Conroy, but it really is a great, like almost like roll call.
It really is.
So then later on, I guess all this stuff actually happened relatively, like, there's not like a huge amount of time that elapsed, but the UCB LA opened.
2005. 2004-ish.
I moved out here right before.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I think we exchanged emails or something. At one point you were like, hey, I'm coming out.
Yeah.
And because you were the first artistic director.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I came out in 2005. So I don't know if it had been open a full year yet. Maybe about that.
How was being an artistic director?
I'm really glad I did it. It was great. In retrospect, it was great. It was very stressful.
Yeah.
I didn't really know what I was doing. I got a lot of advice from people like Owen Burke and Anthony King and other people who had done it. And in retrospect, it seems a little crazy because people didn't know about the UCB. And, there's this cliche that for actors, everybody starts over in LA. No matter what your success was in other pools, you go to LA and everybody's like, huh?
Yeah.
But we came out and a little cocky of we're the UCB, and people just
used
didn't care.
Lines like going around the block and stuff. Yeah.
And people like the business part of it, they just didn't really care.
Yeah.
And they just they didn't really understand what it was in a way. They just sort of thought, hey, my client wants to do a show there. And it's like, well, we don't know your client,
Yeah.
But I'm with CAA, but I don't know if your client represents.
I didn't realize you had to like interface with those types.
Oh yeah.
Oh
yeah.
I guess that's naive on my part, but
so it was a really steep learning curve. I would work, like 70-hour weeks.
Oh my God. Were you just like at the theater? Did you just kind of like live at the theater, you and Jimmy or whatever?
Jimmy wasn't there right away. He was there pretty quick. Jimmy Otto, who's a tech guy. Me and Susan Hale.
Oh yeah.
Me and Susan Hale.
Yeah.
In this fucking tiny little hallway.
Yeah.
That was the windowless hallway that was used as an office it had been a hallway and a dressing room. So it had these hot dressing room lights, those bulbs.
Yeah.
And it was so insane, not conducive, so very stressful. A lot of like, Matt Besser would just call me. I'd be like, oh shit. Oh no, I did something wrong. For the most part, it was really joyous and fun, but it was very, very stressful and, made some mistakes. I knew somebody told me early on, oh, this is a 2-year job.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense.
It's almost like certain jobs in like government administrations where it's like, all right, communications director's leaving and nobody's like, why? They're like, okay.
Yeah, for sure. I met a ton of people. Unlike a lot of people who moved to LA or another city, I did not have any downtime. People talk about how lonely LA can be and you don't run into anybody. And I had it easy in that sense socially because everybody was around.
Yeah.
And as soon as the theater opened up in LA, a ton of people did what I did, which was like, oh, it's safe to move now. We were scared to not have a place to perform or have any kind of connection. And
I was so happy because I had already moved to LA to work on the Tommy Chong documentary.
That's right.
And I was like, shit, because there was no LA theater. Yeah. And so I was like, I guess that's just a weird little chapter of my life. Yeah. I guess that's totally in the rearview mirror. And so I was so happy when the theater
what was the comedy scene like when you
I
did you check anything out?
I sort of had the blinders on.
Yeah.
Like in retrospect, I wish I had maybe gone to the Comedy Store or something. Yeah. But I was kind of like, I was living with the director, kind of hermit crabbing around and had a borrowed car. And a documentary is one of those things where you start off and you have like a certain idea of how it's going to go. And then the reality takes hold and you're just
yeah. But so I did that. I did the theater for 2 years and I knew I would, that helped kind of having a set period in my head of like, okay, I need to do this for at least 2 years. Yeah. And it took about a year to get out from under the water and for people to start to, and I kind of knew like as soon as people get what it is, it's going to be fine.
Yeah, totally.
Because it's just not that there was necessarily a formula, but it was like it'll be undeniable. Like people, you know what I mean? It's just
totally, yeah.
So I was doing things like I was just going to bars and hair salons because I thought, oh, they know people, they talk to people, and I made these little. Here's a card with the theater, and here's a pass, and hey, there's this new theater here, and people are like, okay, all right.
God, that's so funny.
And then soon enough, there was never a specific moment where it turned, but improv nerds knew about it.
Yeah.
And once we started getting classes going and there was just kind of more of a scene again, that was on Franklin Avenue. So there was bars there and people were already kind of there and it just started to gain momentum,
Do you remember the first ASCAT in the LA theater when Andy Dick came out?
I wasn't there for that.
Oh my God.
What did he do?
I went to that. He was just highly uncooperative. He was just kind of in a mood.
Really?
And like the rest of the people there, like the uprights and whoever else was, I can't remember like who fleshed out the cast, but at one point it was like Ian, I hope I'm remembering, it might be Walsh, but one of them was basically talking to him in character and being like, well, doctor, we paid you a bunch of money and flew you out here, so I hope you know what you're doing or whatever. Because he was just like basically like ruining scenes and
he was improvising. He wasn't doing monologues.
He was doing both.
Oh, he was.
Yeah, so he was a monologist and he was improvising, but he just basically was just a one man like scene derailer, and it was at the point where they did the break between the two halves of the show, and you could hear like yelling from the green room from the audience.
Shit. That was the very first one?
That was the first one. Yeah.
I remember at a certain point at ASCATs, they would just ask questions, talk to who's lived in LA or whatever. And a running thing for weeks was who's had a weird run-in with Andy Dick.
Oh, yeah.
Hopefully he's doing better now.
I know.
What a fucking force, man.
It was memorable. And and another little side note was, and this is also, I was just reminded of this recently, but the first two interns were Paul Rust and Neil Campbell, right? At the LA Theater.
Yeah.
That's pretty wild.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man. Just even the people that have worked behind the scenes there. Well, that was exciting too, I will say, in LA. seeing that there was already a little scene here, which must have even been harder for them. It was like Paul Rust, Neil Campbell, Charlene Yee, Kulop, Vilisek.
Oh, yeah.
There was a night called Garage Comedy. Some of those people are still around. They would do stuff at the El Cid and just around, but it was a similar vibe of like, oh, we like comedy and we want to do this. Sorry, Josh Fadem was part of that scene. That was exciting to see too of, oh, there's another thing happening here. Cause it was different. It was a different aesthetic and
ballsy performers.
Yeah. That was another thing that made it feel like, oh, we're going to be fine, you know, because these people are here.
Yeah.
A good thing about UCB is they will find a place for people that are just really funny. Yeah. Whereas there's some comedy schools or improv schools where their model is, okay, at a certain point, you're not in the main company, you're done.
Yeah.
Which I never understood because it's like you're throwing away this amazing talent who maybe they don't do that thing, but they do a bunch of other amazing stuff. So why wouldn't you want that in your gene pool?
I never thought about that. Yeah, it's all main
well, like Groundlings,
based.
You know, like God bless the Groundlings, but like I think both James Adomian and Drew Droege, who are incredibly talented, went through the thing and they didn't get into the Sunday company. And it's essentially like, you're done.
Yeah.
Like, what? Why would you? You're going to say goodbye to James Adomian?
I know.
You know?
Yeah.
So I think that was a pretty inclusive aesthetic, you know?
Yeah.
If you're uniquely funny and also kind of fit into our overall philosophy, you got a place here. We'll find a spot. You know?
Yeah, kind of, for some reason, a couple people come to mind, like Jake Fogelnest, because he's super funny, but not necessarily like
not a performer,
comedian, you know, but very funny.
Yeah.
Ptolemy Slocum, who's obviously done really well as a commercial actor, but pretty specific, you know, like, but, and then also like just the Neutrino team in general with Kurt Braunohler, just like people that were like kind of left of center could find a home and do some, do like the video projects was insane.
Yeah.
You had room to kind of like stretch your legs a little bit.
Did you work on that?
Yeah. I shot some, and then I think I performed in like one of them.
Oh, okay.
But I more did the camera stuff.
Were you there when they did the porn one?
No, I heard about this though.
I think Kurt knew this couple that was like an early porn couple. You know, it was like they only had sex with each other, but they had their own channel or some sort of something.
Okay.
Oh no, it was Steve Buck. Remember Steve Buck?
Yeah.
I think Steve Buck knew him.
He was in Jesus' Son, right? Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah. And it was funny because it was one of the scenes every time he came home, and the joke was that his roommates were fucking. His dad had just died, and they would not stop fucking in front of him. And it was like,
my God,
real fucking.
That's a big swing.
Yeah.
Okay, so now, not that UCB obviously continues in one form or another in your life, but then Funny or Die.
Yeah.
How long were you at Funny or Die?
I started there in 2007, I think. And then I think I was there for about 4 or 5 years. And then I started getting writing jobs and some other acting stuff. But then I would come back for little bits here and there.
It was interesting because my level 1 teacher was Pat McCartney.
Oh, okay.
And he was roommates with Drew Ancis.
Oh, he was?
Yeah, in Queens.
Oh,
like in New York. I think they'd actually moved out to LA together, like prior, even they
really?
had some weird earlier LA stint, I think.
Okay.
Or maybe it was for like pilot season and they stayed or something. I don't know.
Oh,
but
okay.
Drew Ancis like shot the Landlord like thing.
Yeah, he was one of their first, I guess maybe he was the first shooter and editor.
Yeah.
So Adam McKay's wife, Shira, was my acting teacher. So we would just work on acting stuff at the theater before it opened and stuff in the morning. She said, oh, Will and Adam are working on this new thing. And she showed me The Landlord.
Oh, that's so
She goes,
funny.
This is going up. She might have emailed it to me even. And then realized, she goes, oh, please don't show it. And I really didn't get it. I was oh, that's cool. They're going to do a thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Had no idea.
Did they know before The Landlord that they were going to build something around The Landlord? Or did they just literally throw that up on YouTube and they're like, oh shit, maybe we have a thing here?
I'm not sure.
Okay. I've always wondered about that, like the chicken or egg aspect of that.
I kind of feel like they just did it because YouTube was just a new thing.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like they just did it. And I bet pretty immediately the venture capitalist, whoever was the Silicon Valley part of it, came in because it was pretty quick.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely was like.
Yeah.
Actually,
that's a good question. I don't
remember
if that appeared on their thing, but it was a unique thing that like, no, you have to go to their website to get it.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Back when people were still trying to direct people to a website. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Team Coco was like that too. Like when we started, it was 2010 and everybody was just trying to keep everything on their website.
Yeah.
The people felt equally strong on both sides of that argument.
Well, it's also, though, it's fun. I mean, it's easy to say in retrospect, but you can't dictate what people are going to do. Everybody's watching it on YouTube.
Yeah.
It just YouTube won. That's just was the easier way to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then at one point, do you remember when I cut your acting reel?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's right. I have that somewhere.
Blackballed was on there. And I remember being like, holy shit, Seth has been on Curb.
Oh, yeah.
Like Curb was on.
That's
like
right.
Seth's starting to like do like real stuff, you know? Like
Yeah. Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. And then I actually have an apology at one point, and I think this is like a young editor thing. There was like, I don't know, there was probably like 7 or 8 things on there. And one thing was you doing like a yoga instructor bit. Yeah. And at one point I like took it off for brevity, and I was like, he won't miss it. And you're like, dude, where's the yoga?
I'm jacked in that.
Yeah, like, come on, like, what are you doing? Just
that was an MTV promo.
Yeah. But I remember, I still think about that every once in a while.
But in your defense, reels don't need to be very long. Nothing needs to be very long, you know.
Yeah, but just do the fucking thing that the person asked you to do.
Okay, well, unnecessary apology accepted.
Okay, thank you. And then Veep with fellow. Were you and Husky ever in scenes together? Or
no, we worked on the same nights, but we were not in scenes together.
Veep was just like a great home for UC people schooled. But that is written, right? Like, is Veep? What's the mixture?
Veep is written, but they always are open to improv.
Gotcha. Yeah.
It's written.
With the rhythm of it and the sensibility of it, just like when Walsh got on that show, and then when people like Husky started being on it,
and also because in that era, Dave Mandel had taken over from Iannucci. And he was at Curb.
Oh,
he was one of the 3. Who is it? Shoot. It's Jeff Schaefer, Alex. Who does Barry? Alex something or Alec? The guy.
Not Alec Berg, is it? No. That's maybe Silicon Valley.
No, that's the same guy.
Oh, okay.
And Mandel.
So I was a Conan guy, and like way back.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So those 3 were young. I think they were like Harvard, Seinfeld.
Yes.
Writers, and they were superstars there.
Yeah.
And then they were at Curb.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's how Dave knew about me and
oh, gotcha.
Yeah, I think I got that partly because I came in to at the beginning of the season. They would bring in improvisers to just test out scenes.
Oh, that's smart.
So like Jamie Denbo and I came in, and they were trying out some different scenarios of what might happen in this season to see.
Would you be playing one of the principals?
No, I'd be like whatever they needed. Throughout the day, I'm like,
so it wasn't like a scout team in football where they
no. They were like, I'd be like, oh, you're a CAA guy, or you're in the press conference, because they wanted to test out these different bits.
God, that's smart. That's a cool way to work.
Yeah, it was cool to watch those people work.
Oh yeah. And then Big Mouth, which is like fucking murderer's row of people involved in that show.
Yeah.
That's like a full-on writer's room show, right?
Oh,
yeah.
I think for animation, it moves quickly, but animation moves slow, you know?
Yeah.
That's, that writer's room is amazing.
So Kroll and Mulaney, do they run the room, or does somebody else run the room?
Well, Mulaney's just a voice on it. It's Kroll and Andrew Goldberg, who they were buddies when they were kids.
Oh, okay.
So the 2 main characters are loosely based on them.
Gotcha.
The Mulaney character is Andrew Goldberg, and the other one is Nick, obviously. And then Andrew and Nick run it, and then the directors Mark and Jen, they also kind of help run it.
Yeah,
they have their 8-ish writers or so, and then they'll bring in kind of consultants, come in for 2 weeks at a time or 3, which is a good way to do it, because everybody's got different adolescent stories and different sort of perspectives, or you know.
Yeah. Did you ever see? I think it's called 6 Days to Air, the South Park.
I didn't see
documentary. It's worth seeing.
Yeah,
it's
hard to find.
Oh,
Where did you see
did it end up in a weird
I feel like I
legal
looked
thing
for it
or
and I couldn't
something?
find it, but maybe I'm wrong.
It is. I mean, it's kind of like Lost in La Mancha or something. It's like one of those things that's like uncomfortable to watch
Really?
just because you can feel the
Yeah.
stress of.
But that's how they always do it,
I know.
right?
I mean,
Yeah.
it's just the way it's like SNL or something. It's like certain places just operate
Yeah.
a certain way, but it's definitely worth watching for, South Park fans or whatever,
Yeah.
like Matt and Trey, but also Bill Hader was there
Right.
as like, I don't know how often he was there
I
for
think
how
he does
long.
it a lot. Like,
Yeah.
he said he pops in over the years to just sort of help them out
Yeah.
with stuff,
but
right?
you could tell like sort of like the energy infusion he would kind of give the show or
interesting.
whatever. Yeah. But it's definitely worth watching.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
But it's hard to like.
Yeah.
I was kind of stressed out.
Yeah, I bet.
And then Party Down, which must have been
That was great. Yeah, that was a kind of fun, unexpected call. And I'm buddies. Megan Mullally and I had done some Funny or Die stuff, and so
cool.
That was a fun little reunion. And then Ken Marino, I didn't have scenes with him in Party Down, but he directed this Funny or Die Presents thing that I did for HBO.
Oh, cool.
And that was one of his first directing things, and he crushed it. He was amazing. So it was, those jobs, it's at this point, I'm lucky enough to have been doing it long enough where a lot of jobs are little reunions.
Yeah.
Could be with the crew, it could be with other people, and it's great. I mean, one of my favorite parts of comedy is hanging out with funny people.
Yeah.
As frustrated as I can get with it sometimes, and I throw up my hands like, fuck this, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going to be pushed around. But I'm like, I won't be around funny people.
Yeah. Yeah, it was weird when COVID hit. I mean, it was weird for everybody.
Yeah.
Because I was still at Conan at the time, and you just get so used to being surrounded by funny people.
Yeah.
And at certain places, everybody's funny.
Yeah.
Like not just like the on-camera people, but like the IT guy is funny.
Yeah.
Like Chris Hayes is as funny as anybody in,
Yeah.
in that whole scene or whatever. Like I just don't think I could go back to not being around funny people.
Yeah. And you don't want to feel like a dick and talk about civilians and stuff.
Yeah.
But, it's not as fun.
Yeah. I use the term civilian probably more than I should.
Yeah.
And then one thing I've never been to that I'm always highly curious about is Sketchfest seems incredible. Like
it's
from
great.
The outside.
It's so awesome. I mean, the tough thing with those festivals is you're doing your show. So I never see any of the other shows there. Of like, a tribute to Elliot Gould, or they'll have this and that. But I'm from the Bay Area, so it's always a little bit of a family reunion. So that's a obligation that I have, is to see family and see old friends and stuff like that. But it's also, again, I love the hang. Because with Naked Babies, we all live reasonably close to each other, but I hardly ever see those guys. So when we go to San Francisco, we go to Sketchfest or something, it's like go out to dinner before, maybe get a drink after or whatever. But that might be that one of the 2 times that I see him that year. And it's great,
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is I talked to Jackie Clark. Like she's sort of done improvising.
Yeah.
Like she'll do like, I think like reunion shows or like a benefit here and there or whatever. Yeah. You obviously are not done improvising. Right. Do you have like a sense of like, as far as the people that, you came up with, like does Scott Armstrong, does he still improvise? Like
not too much.
Yeah. Like there's certain people that like, that have like amazing careers and could probably still really be funny on stage, but they don't, they're not like match fit necessarily or whatever.
Yeah.
Like if you didn't improvise for like a month, would you feel any sense of like fidgetiness or atrophy or anything like that? Or do you feel like it's so in you that it kind of doesn't matter at this point?
I've gone back and forth. I mean, I was thinking of this earlier, that there's been periods where I was sick of it. I felt a little like I was just doing the same things over and over again. And I'm a big fish in a small pond, and I'm relying on the same kind of hacky stuff, or just felt in different versions of a rut.
Yeah.
And took a break. I just didn't seek it out for a bit of time. And I don't know if I necessarily actively missed it, or I didn't realize how much I missed it until I started doing it again. But I think it's a good thing to take breaks from, for sure. And, with improv, it's weird. It's a little bit, it's silly. It's a silly way to spend your time. It's a great way to spend your time.
Yeah.
But there's times where I'm like, I'm 52 and what am I doing?
Yeah.
But it's still so fucking fun.
Yeah.
I think it keeps me sane and healthy and sharp. So I could live without it, but it wouldn't be as great.
Wouldn't be as rich of
It
an
wouldn't
existence.
be as rich of an existence.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, it's weird. Like in my relationship with it, I had to leave to work on the Tommy Chong documentary, and I just kind of left improv at that point.
Yeah.
I did a storytelling show with Finkelstein at one point.
Oh, right.
But I was just kind of like the
Right.
booth guy that chimed in every once in a while. But that was really fun to at least do something at that theater. But yeah, it's like for me, it was just kind of like it was meeting everybody.
Yeah.
Like and just all those relationships, which is kind of why I got into it to begin with. I was just like finding your tribe kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I definitely do a kind of a sliding doors thing with myself of like, what if I'd stuck with it?
Right.
Like, what would my ceiling be or something? You know, it's weird. But in some ways, I almost feel like I kind of get it more now than I did when I was doing it.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But it definitely like altered my brain makeup.
Well, I also think it's cool that, you know, at first, everybody wants to be on stage and everybody wants to be on TV and everybody wants to be the person, for lack of a better term, in front of the camera. But I think it's really neat how different people broke off and said, well, this is a way that I can contribute to this.
Yeah.
For the people that know that, like, for instance, I really appreciate producers. I appreciate all the levels of it. But people like producers that can be problem solvers and the person who organizes and gets stuff done, and that's a skill that I don't have.
Yeah.
I so appreciate it. And the people who sort of came in and said, I love this kind of comedy. I know I'm not that great at it, but I want to be a part of it. And this is how I can help.
Yeah.
You know, because most people want to do it all.
Yes.
You know, and think that they can.
Yeah.
And most can't do all of it. You know,
which is not an insult. It's just
not
the
at
truth.
all.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Very few people are like the complete package.
Yeah.
Like,
and you need all of those.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure it's made you a better editor. And
for sure. Like I would say the main editing thing, probably like finding the game is probably the tenet that really helps you just be like, all right, this is like this other stuff's fine, but let's really focus on this, you know?
Yeah.
And then as far as like writing, I would say if that's true, what else is true? Yeah. You know, like that's a good idea. Let's expand on that and see where it goes. And also just not being afraid of heightening. Yeah. Like I feel like it teaches you to not be coy with certain things. It's like, let's really attack this idea and see where it takes us, as opposed to being like, oh, okay, I have this idea. Here's the beginning of the thing. Here's the end of the thing. I need to pace it so it fills this amount of time or whatever.
And you must, when you're doing something as an editor, you must know like this is going to get cut. We're not going to use this or right.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I mean, working at Conan was amazing, especially the Clueless Gamer segments. Did you ever see any of those where he would review video games?
Oh, right.
It was kind of like Mystery Science Theater 3000, but with a video game. You know, like it was just like Conan and Blay. Blay did a lot of the heavy lifting. Aaron Blair, like he's an actual gamer, so he would like you know, explain and do all the stuff that just so Conan didn't have to do it.
Right.
And then Conan would just like comment on the ridiculousness or that was not scripted, and it was just like getting to the highlights. It was basically like as quickly as we can frame what people need to know for this to be funny, and then get to the funny part.
Yeah.
And then that was kind of the rhythm of it.
Yeah.
Like I felt like having been at UCB for so long and just kind of like knowing how to like set the table, because those shoots, we would try to just make it as easy on Conan as possible. So you could just like come in, be funny and leave, you know?
Yeah. Well, you know, I mean, you know, Conan was one of the first jobs that everybody had in New York.
Totally. Yeah.
And that was really exciting too, to be backstage and see all that. It looks like vaudeville.
I always hear stories about like the airlock and all that kind of stuff or whatever. And we were kind of like the farm system.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was cool. And neat to watch him work and the writers work. Because the way it would work is you would help the writer sell their bit to get on air.
So in rehearsal?
In rehearsal, they'd be like, so here's this thing, and you know, this is how I think we could sell this. And you want to help them get this bit on air. And then also seeing what got cut and what didn't, and then watching the show and like, okay, that makes sense because my thing got cut, but there was something that was kind of funny in the same way that was a little better, different, and more thematic or whatever. It was neat to. Yeah, I love watching funny people work.
Oh, man.
It's the same thing on Veep. There was a moment when something didn't make sense. And they had, man, that show, I think they just had so much money and prestige, they could just stop and be like, let's fix this.
Let's take a moment.
Oh,
What?
man. Yeah. But they didn't stress because they could do it.
Yeah.
And Julia Louis-Dreyfus was like, this isn't quite right. And it was a master class in a good group problem solving skills, you know?
Yeah, like the group mind aspect of.
Yeah.
And then we're getting close to the end, but we cannot do this without Bob Ducca. at least a mention of Bob Ducca, because that is such a well-loved character. When did Bob Ducca originate?
That started, man, I've been doing them for over 10 years. So originally it started out as a bit that Hubel and I would do hiking. For me and a lot of my friends, just divorced guys have always been a source of comedy. And we're both kind of talking like this, and my beautiful wife, and blah, blah, blah. So that's kind of like where the voice started.
Yeah.
And then I started doing it at Comedy Death Ray, which became Comedy Bang Bang.
Yeah.
And I did some versions of it there when it was.
And that was a UCB stage show initially, right?
Yeah. That was like a variety show kind of. And it was the voice and then list of ailments.
Yes. Had the list of ailments already started at the beginning, or was that something that kind of like.
No, that was when I first did the stage thing.
Gotcha.
Yeah. He's obsessed with self-help, perpetually depressed, trying to get his life together. And lists is a big part of it. And so I did that. And then Scott said, oh, you should do that on the podcast, on Comedy Bang Bang, I guess it was at that point. And that went well. And so then I started doing my own Bob Ducca show. So now I'm in my third incarnation of Bob Ducca podcast. There was Affirmation Nation.
Yeah.
There's two versions of that, which are a little different. One was just me. Then I had interviews with people, other people playing character. And now I'm on Comedy Bang Bang World, and it's a much more produced, it's like a little, each episode is almost like a comedy album, because it's sort of it's not interviews. It's you're listening to Bob try to put a podcast on. So it might be, he gets distracted and you follow him into the bathroom, or
that's awesome.
You know, hear his voicemails to his engineer and stuff like that. And that's really fun because it's
and Brett Morris is fucking,
he's amazing.
I love that guy.
Yeah,
like such a solid guy.
Yeah.
And just
yeah,
endlessly talented.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
Just knows the guts of the machines.
But yeah, it's it's so funny that the thing that you, not that I care about Bob Ducca the least, but it was sort of the easiest sort of throwaway thing, and that's the thing that people really gravitate. And I love it because it's all. I think people like it for the right reasons, you know?
Yeah.
You know, because everybody can relate to having a sore body and being depressed or whatever.
Yeah, it's amazing how fresh it stays, given how like kind of close it stays to the original kernel of it or whatever. It's got legs.
Yeah.
It's not like a SNL movie where it's like, this should have been a sketch, not a movie.
Right.
Well, man, thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
It was amazing.
It's great to see you.
Yeah. I don't know if you do this, but I assume that everybody else sees each other like weekly. I'm the only one isolated.
No. Nobody sees anybody.
Okay. That's
good. COVID and age.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, man. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you, Seth Morris. Man, it is hard to overstate how fucking funny those early Naked Baby shows were. I loved hearing what Seth had to say about the community aspect of comedy, and I can't believe the quality and variety of the projects he's been involved with over the years. Bob Ducca is one of my all-time favorite comedy creations, and I loved hearing that origin story, especially the fact that it just kind of started as a divorce guy riff with Hubel on a hike. If you're looking for proof that hanging out yields results, you can check out Seth's podcast, Full Throttle with Bob Ducca, on Comedy Bang Bang World. Lots of funny people involved in that. And if you're in the LA area, you can see Seth improvise with the group Dinosaur Improv at Largo. Ditto on the funny people involvement. Life in Comedy is recorded at Jett Road Studios. Please rate and review the show and follow the show on Instagram. Thank you for listening.